In my latest book, Service Excellence is as Easy as Pie, Perception is Everything, I take great care to explain that although quality and service are both vital in creating great experiences, they are not the same. They are two sides to the same coin. This is probably one of the most controversial topics that I address because so many times they have been linked. So many times you even hear service quality, you hear people talk about them all at the same time. I think it is dangerous in healthcare to do so because as clinicians, I don't know that we ever really will say that service is as important as quality, and I'm not sure that it is. But they're both, we need both, so just stay with me here. Quality in my mind is a reflection of outcome and results. And I do believe in healthcare, it is the most important thing that we do. Our patient outcomes, our results, very, very important. Service is a reflection of impression and perception. And I can hear some of you say already, oh, smoke and mirrors. Well, I don't care if you want to call it smoke and mirrors because we don't use perception to trick people into buying things they don't need, or we don't use other impressions to cover up mistakes. But we can use impression and perception to create better experiences because you have to have both. If you try to split up the experience coin, it would be an exercise in futility. So let's go back to this coin thing for a second. Let's think about a coin. Let's think about a quarter. And let's talk about what side would be more important. Okay? So for a banker, the result side, the outcome side, the quality side would be the side that says United States Treasury, 25 cents, because that's really what it's all about. But to a coin collector, it's the other side, the side with the impression on it. It's got a picture of a building or a bird or a big giant head. It would be silly to argue what side of the coin was more important because to a collector, it's the whole thing. And we would never have a long discussion about what was more important, what side. But in healthcare, we've been polishing just one side of the coin for a very long time, and that's the quality side. We're good at that. We like quality, we look at outcomes, we look at results, we measure them, we constantly try to improve them. We've been working at that for a long, long time. The problem is, to the people that we take care of, quality is a given. We don't get credit for quality. In fact, some people might say it's a double-edged sword because people expect us to do a great job of quality. No one can get excited if you say, I was in the hospital and I got the right medicine every single day. But we know that medication errors are some of the things that we measure. The problem is when we have a service issue, then we also have when we have a quality issue, then we also have a service issue. So it seems unfair. We get zero credit for quality when it's perfect. But when it's not perfect, not only do we have a quality issue, but now we have a service issue. So if grandma falls and breaks her hip in the hallway, we've got a big quality issue, but we also are going to have a service issue with that patient and the family. And I hear people say, well, Liz, it's really not fair. Because, in healthcare, what we're working with is life and death. And people ought to just be happy when they come in and they get great outcomes and they get great results. Well, maybe they should be, but that's not human nature. Human nature is to expect that quality is a given. So I tell a story about a car. Now, I'm not saying what we do in healthcare is like building cars, but there are some things in a car that could be life or death. Now, for the people who are on the inside, just like the people who are on the inside of healthcare, I'm sure as healthcare professionals, people ask you all the time, who's a good doctor? What's a good hospital? Because we're on the inside and we kind of know. We also know when we're patients what to ask, what to expect, what to look for, and many, many times we are looking for the outcome and results because we know that it's not always a given. But to our patients and their families, it is. So I use the example of the car because there are people on the inside of the car industry that will tell you, buy a car that is built on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. because Mondays and Fridays could get a little wild at the car building place. Now, don't send me letters. I've just heard that, but that's what you hear people on the inside say. I have never, ever looked at what day of the week a car was built when I make a decision on how to buy a car. When I make a decision on how to buy a car or what car I'm buying, I use all the important criteria. How cool is the car? How good do I look driving that thing? And how rad is the sound system? Now, anyone on the inside of the auto industry would tell me I was nuts, but that's what I look for. Now, if I buy a car and there's a quality issue, then we're going to hopefully have a service issue too. Let's say, I buy a car, I'm excited about it, I drive around, I don't go over to my friend's house and say, look at this car. Every time I step on the brakes, it stops. Isn't that great? I put my key in the ignition, it does not blow up. No, I'm not excited about those things. But one of those things go wrong, now we're going to have a problem. I put my key in the ignition one day and blam, the car blows up. I hope we have a service issue. I hope the next time my family goes to buy a car, they say, didn't Liz blow up in a Buick? We are the same when it comes to healthcare. Quality is a given. No one gets excited about what we do, but they want it done right. It's not like we're alone. It's not just the auto industry that has to focus on quality, but keep it kind of quiet. Do you know what Disney's #1 priority is? Now, you're going to probably be guessing out there, so I'm going to tell you. It is not creating the happiest place on earth. It is not creating great customer experiences. It is not about making money, although you think it might be. Disney's #1 priority is safety. Because if you think about it, you're on Magic Mountain and you fall off, no matter how many people are dressed up like Mickey Mouse going, hi, have a nice day, you're not having one. We don't think about that with Disney because we assume when we go there, they're going to keep us safe. But the few stories that you ever hear that come out where maybe something wasn't quite as safe as it could have been are huge issues for Disney because they know that really is the most important thing. So when we think about quality and service, here's the part that's really going to want to make your heads explode. You cannot improve the service side of the coin by improving quality. Now, I know this is a hard thing to understand because if we think about it, if we look at outcomes, and let's call turnaround times are an outcome, we decrease our turnaround time by 50%. Are we going to see a 50% improvement in the patient's perception? Probably not. Because if the patient thought that they shouldn't have to wait at all, even a 50% improvement is not enough. And this does, we're scientists. In healthcare, we're trained as scientists, and we're trained that if we fix the outcome, it should change the perception. It does not. Years ago, when I was at Holy Cross and very much in trouble every day of my life, one day I was called into the CEO's office and he said, Liz, your privacy scores in the emergency department are terrible. And I said, well, don't expect me to do anything about it. He said, excuse me? I said, well, we are seeing 50,000 patients a year in a room that was designed to see about 20,000. There's no privacy down there. We've got flimsy curtains. We didn't even have walls. Flimsy curtains between our stretchers. We've treating people in the hallways. You made me get rid of all the visiting rules, so now we got 100 looky-loos back there, poking where they don't belong. There's no privacy down there. You're so concerned about privacy in that emergency department, you need to build a new ER. He said, Liz, we are not building a new emergency department. I said, then exactly what do you expect me to do about privacy down there? He said, I don't know, Liz, it's your department. Why don't you figure it out? I was not happy. I went back to my office and I was complaining to my old buddy, a man most of you know, Don Dean. And Don said to me, Liz, when you pull a curtain around a patient's stretcher, do you let them know you're doing it for their privacy? I was like, well, duh, Don. Why else would we do it? We had been pulling curtains for years. We never worried about impression. We never worried about perception because we had the right outcomes. We are in full compliance. We've got the right results. Check up and down our hallways. Look at every single room. Call in the Board of Health. Call in JACO. We've got this. It wasn't until we started telling our patients why we were pulling curtains that we realized some of our patients had the wrong impression. Some of our patients said, we just always figured you were pulling those curtains because you didn't want to look at us. Maybe just a little, just say it. No, it would never be that. Changing from perception changing from results to perception is not a difficult thing, it's just different. And in healthcare, different is a bigger battle. My team said, why should we have to tell these patients why we're pulling their curtains? I was like, I don't know. But if it works, let's just do it. It's hard for us to not only want to just fix the results and think that's enough. Another story that I use is I was working with a hospital who had terrible scores with noise. And it was a committee, and one of their biomedical engineers said, Liz, I can prove that our patients are wrong about noise. I thought, well, this is going to be good. I was like, go ahead. He said, I brought in a decibel meter reader. And he said, I put it on every single unit, and I did the calculations for a month. And in every unit and every test, we were either at or below the industry standard for noise. Yet, these patients keep ranking us noisy. I said, well, we could do one of two things. We could tell your patients right when they're admitted, this is not a noisy hospital. We have the decibel meter readers to prove it. I said, or you could try lowering your lights. They're like, what? Because scientifically that doesn't make any sense. I get that. But they used to turn their lights down at 11 p.m., traditional change of shift time. I said, why don't you try lowering your hallway lights at 8 o'clock? Now, there's probably a little outcome there. Probably some people did start to speak softer when the lights were lowered. But more importantly was the patient's perception was that when the room was darker, when the hallways were darker, it was quieter. This is the good news. Changing perception is not difficult. It's easy. And all the strategies that are implemented for service excellence support changing perception. Hourly rounding is a great one. I was in an organization and they said, oh, we've got great compliance with hourly rounding, and they weren't seeing the type of results that you would think. So I went up and I did some rounds and I said, where are your rounding logs? There weren't any room. They said, oh, we keep them on the charts. And I said, you can't put them on the charts because the whole idea about hourly rounding is to change the patient's perception, to make sure that the patients and their family members know someone is in here every hour checking up on you. It's not about the outcome or the result that needs to be on a chart somewhere in a nurse's station. It's about changing that perception right with the folks that are experiencing the service excellence, the people that are there. Putting it on at a nurse's station does not help. They were not happy. I made them put those rounding logs back in the rooms, and guess what happened? They saw their scores improve. When we look to change the patient experience, it's got to be about improving perceptions. If you want to learn more, get my book, Service Excellence is as Easy as Pie, at firestarterpublishing.com.